Welcome into a Tuesday edition of Daily Faceoff Live. Tyler Yaremchuk and Frank Seravalli with you, as we are every weekday at noon Eastern time here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. The show is brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today and use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. The YouTube chat already buzzing with talk about our mock draft. Stephen Ellis is going to join the show in a bit. But Frank, how are you doing?
I'm good. Some controversy last night with the New York Islanders. Patrick Waugh not happy, but let's talk about it because there's a lot to break down.
There is a lot to get to from last night in the NHL. So let's kick it off with the game that has everybody talking. It's Utah taking down Detroit 5-1. No, I'm kidding. It's the comeback cannons, the Columbus Blue Jackets, staying in the mix in the Eastern Conference wildcard race. And as you said, Frank, not without a little bit of controversy. A goal waved off. It goes against the Islanders. Patrick Waugh absolutely sounding off post-game. Tyler Mulix in the chat, is Waugh going to get fined? I would imagine so, Frank. I don't think the NHL likes calling out the old integrity of the review thing.
Yeah, probably not the best choice of words, but I understand the frustration because it's such a critical game, and have it come down to that call. I get why you'd be unhappy. Here's the thing, though. Last week at the GM meetings, we've talked in depth about goalie interference and the video review, and I entered the week with some significant confusion. It feels like to me that there had been some more inconsistency this season. On the other end of that trip, having watched the Situation Room guys explain it to media and to understand the conversation of what went on with general managers in that meeting, where they reviewed 54 of their toughest challenges this year to set their compass straight. Hey, are we calling this in the right direction, the way you guys who are the stewards of the game would like to see the game called? And the answer on 52 of the 54 was a yes. They voted on each play. Do you believe that the correct call was made? And they said, yes, that's the correct call. So that said, once you take that information and you understand it, it's not really about, Tyler, what you think or what I think or Patrick Waugh thinks or about whoever else. The GMs have set the course here. So, okay, so they've turned the compass in the direction that they want it to be called. Fine, we get facts. Then I published a story last week, guidelines, a checklist on what to expect during a goalie interference challenge. And I tweeted it again this morning just for reference. It's evergreen. It's not, unless the rule or how they interpret it changes, it's not changing. So go to number 2, the bullet point on there, which is, hey, anytime there's a play where the referee signals no goal, waves it off before it's reviewed for goalie interference, that means that he viewed it to be a deliberate collision between the attacking player and the goaltender while he was in his crease. That's his view, obviously subjective, but the NHL made it clear last week that once that is the call on the ice, there must be clear and convincing evidence to change that, which they almost never, ever overturn a no-goal call. However, if you're an Islander fan, it would be, or potentially could be, different if the call on the ice was a goal and then it was challenged by Columbus for goalie interference, which in this case wouldn't have happened because it was under 2 minutes in play and it's a situation room review anyway. Nonetheless, a totally different set of circumstances. Once it's no goal, once it's waved off, it's almost never coming back. So get used to it.
Well, and that's exactly it. Like, I think where there is maybe some frustration is, like, we have this benefit of review. Why are we putting so much stock into how the referee sees it in a split-second decision? Like, is that maybe where
because
they
he's 3 to 5 feet away and he sees it? If there's enough conviction for him to wave it off, which again very rarely happens with goals. I mean, out of 100 goals scored, are 3 of them potentially waved off in the meantime? It rarely happens. Usually it's called a good goal and then, hey, we'll address it after the fact. This time he had enough conviction in the moment, standing right there, to say no goal. It's not because he hates the Islanders. I can guarantee you that's the case.
No, and anyone crying that, I see someone else saying, the league wants to give the Blue Jackets the calls. Like, no, I don't think that's, like, anyone who thinks that is a little bit too, you know what. But anyways, back to the point the Islanders end up losing, because the Blue Jackets do take it in a shootout. It ends up being a pretty significant point because now they sit still 1 point back of the Montreal Canadiens in the Eastern wildcard race. But how about Columbus, Frank? They'd kind of lost some steam, 2-7-1 in their last 10, even with that win last night. But I mean, teams can't stay hot forever. They also can't really stay cold forever, I guess. Do you think Columbus is maybe due for a little bit of a bounce back here?
Well, I think they're getting it right now with Sean Monahan returning to the lineup. I mean, you see 3-on-3 overtime beginning. Who's on the ice to start it? Sean Monahan, Eric Goodbranson. Like, those are two really big pieces for this Columbus team to get back that I think could give them a shot in the arm.
Yeah, they're right there, tied with the Rangers in points percentage and just purely based off points, 2 points back of the Canadiens, although Montreal does have that one game in hand. One thing that you do also want to keep an eye on this time of year is the tiebreaker factor in all of this, and the New York Rangers are running away with that tiebreaker when you look at that group of 4 teams. So again, about 10, 11, 12 games to go for most of these teams as we head down the stretch, and who knows, it could come down to a tiebreaker again.
Yeah, I mean, certainly could. We've seen it before. And I think this was a massive test for the Blue Jackets, though, given how they had played of late. And I asked the question when the week started on the DFO rundown with Jason Gregor, which of these teams would basically cancel themselves out, cross them off the list as playoff candidates this week? Because you're getting down to crunch time. It's nail-biting time. Would Utah Hockey Club stay in the mix? Would Columbus and Detroit and some of these other teams? You get the full 2 points against one of the teams that's ahead of you in Columbus, and you're doing all right.
Well, not too. Like the amount of times we've seen games go to a shootout or overtime or whatever, these 3-point games are really throwing off the calculations as well.
Yep.
Just one more thing on the Blue Jackets, a weird little schedule glitch. They have 3 of their final 12 remaining games against the Ottawa Senators, which I found to be interesting considering, again, the Senators have a nice gap right now, but 3 4-point swings in a 2-week stretch. Not that you'd think Columbus is going to win all of them, but anyways, interesting to point out nonetheless.
They could. I mean, look, the Sens have had some interesting splits this year, and not only that, but they just were on a 3-game losing streak at the absolute worst time. Who knows?
Okay, speaking of overcoming adversity, no Elias Pettersson, no Nils Höglander, and I won't say no problem for the Vancouver Canucks because that game was anything but a cakewalk, but for the second time in a week, they get a very, very late tying goal. They force overtime, and this time, Vancouver finishes the job. They get the come-from-behind victory over the New Jersey Devils. Pius Suter was unbelievable in this game. A guy that there was talk, it's like, hey, do you just dump him for whatever at the deadline, get a second, get a third-round pick, whatever the ask is? Well, he ends up being their top-line center last night and looking pretty good, Frank. And Thatcher Demko returns between the pipes. Wasn't maybe the best regulation run for him, but then he goes to the shootout and looks great and helps the Canucks steal away an extra point from the Devils. But a big win for Vancouver.
Yeah, and pretty electric moment for Lekaramaki. The stick twirl. Then, speaking of stick, Jacob Markstrom wasn't a huge fan of his after that. And massive 2 points for the Canucks. It seemed like they were down and out against the Devils team that they've reached pets' heads falling off stage. And when it comes to Pius Suter and the spot that he's put in, who's the more unlikely number 1 center right now in the Pacific Division? Is it Pius Suter or Ryan Nugent-Hopkins? Honestly, a fair question to ask, but Suter, I think that was 21 goals on the season. He had crested 20 recently. And look, you could make adversity the middle name of the Canucks season. I mean, it's been one thing after the other, and this latest string of injuries, full marks to Thatcher Demko as well, picking up the win, stepping back into the crease for the first time since February 8th, I think. And look, this Canucks team, not all that different than Calgary or some others that are in the mix. They've showed some serious stick-to-itiveness that I think you're going to have to pay attention to.
Yeah, and Rick Tocchet giving his group a lot of credit following the game. And again, this is coming down to a good 10-game stretch defines your season for Vancouver, getting Thatcher Demko back. And we'll talk a little bit more about injuries in a moment. But, and listen, Kevin Lankinen was an amazing story early on, and they signed him to the extension. And who knows what happens with Demko in the summer. But for right now, and before he went out of the lineup the last time, Demko was showing signs of turning it around. Man, if Vancouver can get 10 good games out of Thatcher Demko here, that changes the calculation out west.
It changes the entire conversation. I mean, you ask me what the future holds for Thatcher Demko, whether it's in Vancouver or elsewhere. The first question I need you to answer for me is, what's his health status?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of health status, let's stay in the Pacific Division and talk about a little injury updates, or get to a couple of injury updates. Thomas Hertl not going to go on the 3-game road trip with the Vegas Golden Knights, so the earliest he could return is next week against the Edmonton Oilers. But good news, as you get a look at what those, man, a scary collision when a guy goes into the boards with that much speed. The good news for Vegas is they could get Shea Theodore back maybe a little bit earlier than expected. But on Hertl, Frank, is there any concern that this is something that could linger into the playoffs, or are they just taking it day by day?
Not to this point in time, but don't love to see him clutching his hand and his wrist there. Certainly not a pretty collision by any stretch of the imagination. And I think a guy that is a huge part of what Vegas does. Look, the Golden Knights have something to play for. I think it's up for debate as to what the best course of action is, probably. Is it to win the division? Does it matter? Would you rather have the Oilers or someone, or the Kings, catch you for that matter? I don't think the Minnesota Wild are going to be a cupcake by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're going to be a really tough out. And even if you beat them, again, provided that Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson Ek are back, it's going to be a bruising series. You're going to leave wounded no matter what. So getting Shea Theodore back, though, would be a monster move, a monster addition for that team.
Yeah, it would be really, really big. Obviously injured at the Four Nations Faceoff representing Team Canada, but even just getting him back to get back up to speed before the playoffs would be big. But I like that question you kind of posed, Frank, and it does tie into the Oilers a little bit here. And I see some of the Oilers fans in the chat being like, hey, just sit McDavid and Draisaitl for however long you need to, because who cares? And I guess with Vegas, it could be that same mindset. Like if you're Vegas or Edmonton, as weird as it sounds, you're prioritizing health over winning the division here. Like you don't really care if you come first or second, because the gap between LA and Minnesota, as you kind of said, it's probably razor thin. Maybe you want home ice. So if you're Edmonton, you push to finish second, but like the priority is getting your guys right. You're not all that worried if you go 5-5 in your last 10, are you?
100% in agreement. And the goal for these teams should be to get these players to 100, or as close to reasonably you can, to 100% health. That's all that matters. You've got, especially if you're Edmonton, two of the best players in the world that are the best playoff performers of all time. They're in that conversation now without having a Stanley Cup, with their points and production. You know, as well as this team, I guess, could potentially play. And you say, oh, hey, how great would it be for the Oilers if so-and-so steps up to help get them to, whatever, home ice advantage or whatever. That's great. But there's going to be so many lineup changes that happen, adding back in 29, 97, Trent Frederick and Evander Kane for the playoffs, that like whatever continuity you might have, like they've got some tough choices to make, I think, once you're on the backside of that. So I wouldn't focus on seeding, standings, who has home ice, even though the LA Kings are 25-3 on home ice so far this year. Just park that out of sight, out of mind, because your run is going to be very short if those guys aren't up to speed.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move along to the news of the day, Frank. An extension out in Washington as the Cap signed Jakob Chychrun to an 8-year deal. It comes with a $9 million AAV for the 26-year-old, which makes him the Capitals' highest paid defenseman. He'll earn $1 million more than John Carlson next season. He's one goal away from a career high. He's fitting in perfectly on this Capitals blue line. And hey, like I said, 26 years old. I don't have any concern about the number here. Yes, he's tied now for the 10th highest cap hit amongst defensemen in the league, but as we know, the cap keeps going up. That will continue to age well. I like that the Capitals are keeping him in the mix.
Look, and if he plays every game this season, he probably finishes with something like 23 or 24 goals. I mean, not a stretch to say, hey, this is someone that could challenge Mike Green. I think one of his career goals written down on paper is to become a 30-goal scorer as a defenseman. He's eminently capable of that. You heard Chris Patrick say in their release today that he's a proven dynamic offensive defenseman, and he truly is. The term and the dollars don't scare or surprise me. You mentioned the cap going up, but also just look at the production. Those goals really mean something when they come from the back end. And I also think about one of the very best conditioned athletes in the NHL. You're talking about a top 1% of players who take care of themselves and their body on a daily basis, that I don't have any concern that he's going to age well. Some might look at his injury history and say, hey, that has to be significant. And I'm like, well, outside of the one knee injury, most of them are kind of freak occurrences. And if you're looking for some old listening material, last season, while he was still with the Ottawa Senators, I did a Frankly Speaking with Jakob Chychrun, and we went in depth on all those injuries and what had sort of been plaguing him. So it's been an interesting ride for him, a life-changing contract, and he basically near doubles the 4.6 million a year that he was earning on this current long-term deal that aged beautifully. So I have no doubt that this was the right play for the Caps. And for a player of his stature, like I think they initially began talks earlier in the year, somewhere in the $7+ million range. I think the upper sevens. And it was like, dude, when you see his production, when you think about what the comps are and what they could be, like he's well within his rights to get to that $9 million number.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the Capitals now, like they have one more year of Carlson, who is already 35 years old. So they'll have his 36th season. Then he's a UFA. I mean, this is just perfect to me. It's just a natural transition now on that blue line.
And one more year of Ovechkin, like they're going to have plenty of cap space moving forward. Yeah, they're going to have to pay some of their younger guys, but Chychrun being age 26, that was part of the beauty of the trade. Trading an older Nick Jensen is someone you're going to have for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's continue along with the show. I know everyone's excited for our mock draft today with Stephen Ellis. It's brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. You can check out their large selection of Canadian lab-grown diamonds and mine diamonds by visiting them at their website. You can also apply for a Charm Diamond Flexity card, which allows you to get approved for no interest financing on your purchase in minutes. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. The next wave with Stephen Ellis, our daily Faceoff prospect analyst. And Stephen, we're digging into your top 10. We're doing a little mock draft today, and let's start right up at the top. You do have Matthew Schaefer still as your number one overall pick, but how many other guys are truly in that conversation and could contend for the number one overall spot?
If you asked me this back in December, and I know you did, I would have said two guys, but I think my two players have changed. And yes, Matthew Schaefer definitely, to me, still is that number one, despite having not played a game since the World Juniors. But Michael Misa is there too now. And if you look at him with one of the most productive seasons we've ever seen in the OHL, he just had his 134th point to finish the regular season. That ties what John Tavares did early in his career. And, with Misa, 62 goals, like just unbelievable numbers. He showed up in so many different elements of the game. I thought he looked better defensively. I thought he was better physically. I've said before, but that's the guy I'd put out there on the ice if I need to score a game-winning goal. Do you know who could have also used him? Team Canada, the World Juniors, and they didn't even invite him to training camp.
Oh, okay. So you went there. Gotcha. Look, I think this mock draft, and if you want to throw it up on the screen again, Pat, it's going to be so fascinating to watch play out, because I think in some respects, it's really going to depend on who wins the lottery. So let's just game plan this out. You see Chicago, who, by the way, is not out of the realm of possibility that they finish with the best odds. That gap has closed in the last 2 weeks between themselves and the Sharks. If Chicago were to win the lottery, given the defenseman that they have in their system currently, the last thing they need is another defenseman. Not to say that it's a problem having too many, but how big is the gap between Schaefer and Misa? Like if they decided to say, you know what, we have a positional need, but beyond that, we think there's a chance he is the better player. Would you be surprised to see them do something like that?
I think you can make the argument for Schaefer or Misa, and to maybe the same extent Hagens, depending on how you look at it. But if I'm the Blackhawks and I get the first overall pick, I'm taking Michael Misa right now. And that's like Schaefer would be the best defenseman they have. But with Misa, this is a guy that he could be that guy who could score goals. And when you look at how his career has kind of played out at this point, he's played about just as much on the wing as he's played on center. Now, this year he has played a lot more center, but this is a guy that you could put on the power play on the flanks. He'll do well. You can play him in so many different situations. Like I would love to see him play with Connor Bedard. And I feel like that'd be a perfect fit, because for as good as he can be defensively, I think he is still better when he's focusing on just dominating the puck possession and trying to create things with the puck. So you can almost put him on the wing and be pretty happy. But yeah, like that's one where it fits a lot of boxes for that team. A guy who could generate offense on his own, who's in the right spot a lot of the time, great shot. And I think he's a lot stronger and physical than he was even at the start of this season. So that's who I would take if I was the Chicago Blackhawks.
Gotcha. So when you take a look at the top 10, who are some other defensemen outside of Schaefer, though, that you'd see as fitting that criteria?
I would look at Jackson Smith, and that was one when I went to the Hlinka Gretzky, really impressed me because he was playing all these different situations. He had 11 goals this year, which, is pretty solid. It's not Carter Yakimchuk or Zane Parekh level goals, but I would argue Jackson Smith, the big thing for him is just how defensively sound he is. He's also 6'3". He's very mobile. I think next year we're looking at him getting 75, 80 points in the WHL if everything goes right. And just a guy that it seems like his teammates really love to spend time with, a guy that just is making everyone laugh. He's got a good personality, and he's also just on the ice, just a difficult player to play against. So I'm not sure how high I would rank him in last year's draft class among defensemen because there are a lot of good blue liners, but I think in this year, he's a good number 2.
So if we were to take a look at your top 10 again, is there anyone on this board that you're more high on than others?
I would probably... It's kind of close to what you'd kind of see elsewhere, but I really like Jake O'Brien. That's a guy that, I feel like he's a bit underrated. And you look at him this year, 32 goals, 98 points. Like he wasn't, at one point, it was looking like he was probably going to finish it closer to 80, but he had a really good second half and having some really good line mates and teammates in Brantford helped. Like we just saw Nick Lardis put up some unbelievable goal counts with the Bulldogs, but with Jake O'Brien, really good two-way player. And I know, Frank, you're a big fan of Cal Ritchie. They're not the same player, but one thing I really noticed with him is how adaptable he is, how smart he is, and how committed he is to the two-way game. A lot kind of what we saw out of Cal Ritchie in his draft year. So 98 points this year almost felt a little too quiet, like people weren't talking about it enough, but I'd say that Jake O'Brien deserves a lot of attention.
Hey, I want to throw you something that we got in our chat here because I know this prospect is a little bit divisive, mainly because he hasn't played this year. But Tyler Mulick, no Roger McQueen, top 10 is silly. Jason goes, I wouldn't take McQueen at all. What makes McQueen just this divisive?
Well, I know a lot of people are a little scared about the fact that he has not played a lot this year. And when he did return from his injury, he hasn't been that good. But then you're looking at 6'5", very mobile, skilled guy. So there is all that that skill there and all that things you can look at and be excited about. But I do know some teams are worried and saw what happened with Caden Lidstrom last year, and we're like, okay, is he going to be healthy enough to play? And so we'll see. I actually very closely put him on this list, but the fact that he hasn't played a ton and hasn't looked as good as we were kind of hoping from when he came back, I think has definitely cause for concern there.
Yeah, how did that work out with players not playing and Wyatt Johnston? I mean, be careful what you miss out on.
True. Hey, the thing about Wyatt Johnston was you look at the analytics, that was someone who was always going to explode. But with Roger McQueen, we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to an NHL GM actually last week at the meetings, and we were just having a cocktail, and he said, I brought up the Wyatt Johnston not playing that year. And he's like, well, I did see him at the under 18s in Dallas and thought that he was very average. Didn't understand the hype. So sometimes that happens too.
Yeah. With Johnston, I know I was surprised he went as high as he did, but when you go back and look at some of the underlying analytics, it was like, that was a guy that it felt like he had a lot of bad luck. But then when he went and played at that under 18s, he was also playing like bottom 6. He was playing a role he had no business playing in. Like most other under 18 years, his talent level, he was playing much higher. But because of how good that 2021 team was due to COVID shutting down leagues and all the players being available, it pushed him down. And yeah, I feel like he got some unfair views. But then you look, obviously, what he's doing right now, looking pretty good.
Yeah, and I just think back for the Oilers too, how tough that is. Xavier Bourgault going the pick ahead of him, and Paul Coffey wasn't working for the team then, but obviously knew Wyatt Johnston from Ontario and was like, you got to pick this kid. And they passed.
Yeah, it's tough.
So wanted to wrap though, as we get closer to June and the draft, there's always this debate, and we're now on the other side of trade deadline, and we saw how these first round picks were moved. Can you give us an overall sense of the quality of this class? Is it average? Is it below average? Like, and I'm talking top to bottom.
Yeah, like I'd say the top of the class is pretty solid, but then when you get to that mid first round, even late first round, like
What's your cutoff? Like you gotta have one.
I'm excited about the top like 24, 25.
Okay.
And
And then after that, could you get the same player from 25 to what?
40, I want to say 40, 41. Like I talked to some scouts who were like, they don't even want to rank past 25 this year.
Okay. And then here's another brain buster for you. So you got Misa and Schaefer. Those are your two. Do you have a clear cut line at 2?
Right now, those are the two guys I'd only consider number 1, but I still look at that top 4 and say, I would understand if any of those guys weren't in the top 4.
Okay, so let's say you got 1 to 4 being relatively equal. I'm putting that in air quotes.
Sure.
So you go from 4. Give me your next cut line.
I'd go 5 to 7. I like the Swedish guys and Caleb Denoyer. They're all just great in different aspects. They're just not top 4 quality.
And then 8, is it 8 to 24 after that?
I'd say 8 to 14, and then
Okay.
about 15 to 24.
Okay, there you go. So those are your tiers. And I think that's the hardest thing to do in the scouting process. So you just got really good insight from someone who is in it every day.
There you go, Steven. Appreciate your time, man. Thanks for popping on. We'll chat again in a couple of weeks because you're off on your honeymoon, so you enjoy that.
I'm looking forward to it. Although Jamaica and Haiti, I'm going there. They have hockey teams, just so you know.
Don't, Steven. Just enjoy your honeymoon.
Throw
man.
your phone in the ocean, bro, if you want to stay married.
We won't have any internet. That's what's going to happen.
All right. See you, Steven.
Thanks.
Moving along, daily face-off inbox question, hashtag AskDFO. I know we talked a little Oilers already, but Randy goes, is the Chychrun deal any sort of a comparable for Bouchard and Frank? We can even lump this into Dobson as well, who's a pending RFA.
Yeah, I think it helps kind of set the baseline, the standard of what it might look like. I mean, look, I think the Oilers need to do whatever they can to keep him under a $10 million AAV.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's beyond that, I'm saying I'm going to have to look to move you.
Yeah, and the tough part with Bouchard is obviously that he is arbitration eligible, and with the offensive numbers he puts up, I mean, a lot of teams
82-point season last year is going to loom large.
Yeah, it is. That is something that could really come through in the arbitration process. Let's get to our daily bets for Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Couple of plays for you tonight, including an all-Ontario parlay. I like both the Leafs and Sens to win tonight, but the numbers are juiced up a little bit, so I'm playing them together. I think Ottawa will keep things going over Buffalo and Toronto, who's been, again, a little bit up and down, but they're on home ice tonight, and Philly is absolutely floundering 1-8-1 in their last 10. So give me the Leafs and Sens. And then on the other side there, you see my shot prop parlay. Connor Zary has hit this in 3 straight games with 11 total shots in that stretch. Erik Karlsson also hit it in 3 straight with 9 total. Their lines are both set at 1.5, so they just need 2+ shots on goal. Comes in at plus 135. So those are my 2 picks for tonight, which brings us to garbage time. Frank, you and I both baseball guys, and I appreciate the technology side of baseball. I am absolutely a nerd when it comes to it. And I don't know if you saw this, but they're starting to track how players' feet move in the batter's box, and the data, I believe, is going to be like all publicly available as well, which is, again, just crazy to think about. But I wanted to ask you, one, again, both baseball guys, excited for baseball season, but if there's one thing you wish the NHL tracked, like something small and maybe nerdy, what's some data you'd love to know?
So I'm going to take it in a different direction. I think we're so frustrated with goalie interference and an offside. Those seem to be like at least the offside, and also high stick pucks that were they under the crossbar? Were they not? And also puck crossing the goal line. I think puck crossing the goal line, offside, if you had sensors and skates, and then also the high stick. Like, I think those are all solvable hockey things with technology that you could work toward. Now, we did ask the commissioner about that last week, Gary Bettman in Florida at the GM meetings, and he said, we're working on it, but we're not going to introduce something like that until we can triple check it. So you're talking about sensors in the posts, obviously the sensors in the rafters, and then sensors in the puck for something as simple as puck over the line. How many times, oh, that one's obscured by his pad or his glove? I mean, we could probably solve for that today, but I think the league's getting closer to it. It's not the same question you'd ask, or you asked, but I don't know that I have necessarily a good one, because there are a lot of advancements when it comes to that. Not only do players wear the sensors internally at practice, the catapult chips on their chest, but actually some teams are now investigating chips in their skate insole. So they're testing like stride and like stride length and force and like all those things to help sort of better measure skating. And I think that's like the next sort of cutting edge, but I'd say 2/3 of the teams in the league aren't there yet.
Then hypothetically you could get numbers on like who stops and starts the most in a game and stuff like that. That'd be kind of cool.
But would that tell you anything though? Like, see, that's the only problem I have with the analytics is like, we've got mountains of data, but like most of it is just, okay, great. This guy skates the furthest distance in the NHL. Until you correlate that to like on ice success, like I don't care. And that's the biggest problem that we have is like, unless you're telling me with like, let's say you're talking about data in insoles, right? Of skates. And you're telling me this guy's 73% more likely to get injured soon because of the laboring in his skating compared to September. Like, I'm not really that intrigued by it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. You need like a tangible use for it. Otherwise, it's just tracking a guy's feet in the batter's box. It really doesn't tell you that much, but it's fun for the nerds, and I kind of like that.
All for the nerds.
Yeah.
Nerds need loving too.
Coaching nerds, John Goyens tomorrow on the show as we continue along with the week and continue talking playoff race as well. So if you're in the YouTube and you're new, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a show. That is a wrap on today's edition of DFO Live. We'll see you all right back here tomorrow at noon Eastern. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Seravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.